Good afternoon and welcome to the Richland College Student Media Town Hall for Spring 2017. I'm Erica Edwards, lead faculty for journalism at Richland College, and joining me is Government Professor Patrick Moore. This evening, we'll be talking with Richland College students about President Trump's first 100 days in office. It's a traditional mile marker of a president's accomplishments during what's commonly known as the honeymoon period. Candidate Trump issued an aggressive contract with the American voters, a plan for his first 100 days, with mixed reviews.
We conducted a non-scientific poll of Richland Journalism and Government students to get their opinion on President Trump's first 100 days in office. Of the students who responded to our poll, 1/3 found the president's first 100 days in office to be superior or exemplary, while 2/3 found the results to be unsatisfactory. While some noted the new president's ability to follow through with campaign promises, others cited his lack of ability to do so.
So this afternoon, we're joined by 7 Richland students to discuss the president's first 100 days. President Trump presides over a Republican-led Congress with both House and Senate led by conservative majorities. His first 100 days were marked not by the traditional relationship building, but with a flurry of 12 executive orders in his first 3 weeks in office.
Healthcare was the top issue in our current polling, followed by the bombing of Syria, immigration, and the environment. Joining us in the studio today are students Gloria, Kevin, Andrew, Harris, Chris, Austin, and Chastity.
According to our poll, the top issue among students is health care. President Trump promised during the campaign that he would overhaul the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. The new plan, which would have placed the largest financial burden on those over 50 years old, caused infighting among conservative and moderate Republicans on March 24th. That's the point the Republicans pulled the legislation from the House floor after concluding it would fail if brought to a vote. Now, today we're going to be talking with our students about what you see is the government's role in ensuring that health care coverage is more widely available. Do you think government should take an active role? And Harris, we drew straws and it fell to you. So please start us out.
Well, before I get into what I think the government's role should be, I think that this whole flip-flop and failure of him trying to pass legislation, I think it'll be a learning experience for him. I think in the long run it'll be very good. He definitely thought, I got majorities, I can just walk in there, tell them, hey, if you don't vote for this, you're going to lose your seat, and it'll be done. Like, Congress is so much more complicated than he's come to realize. And this is his first ever legislative experience, but I liked how afterwards he was pretty humble about it. He said, I'll work with Democrats to get real health care done. We tried our best, and we'll try again. So I think in the long run, he'll get something done eventually, once he starts to figure out the rules a little bit more. As far as the government's role, it's interesting. When I learned in American history, the Democrats used to have the vision for universal health care. Everybody has health care. It goes back to FDR and Truman. And the Republicans, Eisenhower, Nixon, they had their idea of, well, let's find a way that the market can cover everybody. And I don't know what's happened, but it's just flip-flopped, and the Republicans seem to have no real solution, while the Democrats and what Obama passed was market-based health care. The Republicans' original idea. So the way I look at it is Trump should do his best to get a single-payer act done, because let's bury this issue. Like, we're the only major country who has to deal with this problem. Our standard of living is going down because of it. And in Canada and England, the lines may be longer to get health care, but at least everybody can afford it and everybody has good quality health care.
Interesting that you see single-payer health care as the best solution. I'll be interested if any of the panelists see it that way. Chastity, you had your hand up.
I was just going to say, in relation to what Harris was saying, the government does have a role in providing health care, but whether you're Republican or Democrat, I don't feel that you should be penalized for choosing not to have health care as it was before. That's the part that I could never agree with. I mean, if you don't have it and you can't afford it, why should you also be penalized for it? What's affordable on a standard for everyone, or those who are in Congress may not be realistic for my living situation. So if I choose not to have health care, why should I be penalized for that? And if I am going to choose to have health care and it is going to be government mandated, I should be able to get it from wherever I would like to get it from.
You mean
Okay.
crossing state
State
lines
as well,
as opposed to
because
a state?
yeah,
exchange?
it shouldn't be mandated to just the state that I'm in. I used to work in insurance, and a lot of people would call moving into a different state, and they would have to transfer their entire plan because certain pharmacies in certain states didn't cover it, or certain doctors in certain states didn't cover the same things that have been covered under healthcare for years. And that's one of those things that if you're going to be a private practice, then you should practice privately and not have access to government mandated healthcare. It should come out of that person's pocket. But if you are publicly practicing, then you should cover everything that is covered under the public.
Fair enough. Andrew, you had something to add?
Oh, yes. Well, it's a pleasure to be back. I mean, it's what I can say about healthcare is that I personally don't have health insurance. Is it bad? Sure is. But, I mean, when you look at a legislative perspective, I mean, the Republicans and the Democrats, that we have to work together, regardless of the biasness and just the negativity. Speaking on the Paul Ryan's perspective, I mean, he may not run for re-election. You know, the state of Wisconsin, they're about fed up with him. You know, Paul Ryan cannot get things done, cannot get the job done. And is it a negative aspect, part of Trump's first 100 days? Sure is, because that tells the voters, well, this is a honeymoon phase, sure, but, you know, what Trump promised during the campaign, we're trying to get things done and get things done in an expeditious way. And Paul Ryan has proved, I mean, you can't get things done. And then also the House Freedom Caucus. But with Paul Ryan being in the mix, being Speaker of the House at such a long amount of time, I mean, it just shows that, you know, all talk, no action, and that's what's been proven so far. But I can only speak from just these first 100 days. I could be wrong, though. We'll see the next 100.
Anybody else?
Trump did promise to get rid of Obamacare because it was terrible, according to him. People like myself, I just turned 26 last year. My premium is $300 a month. My deductible is over $3,000. My past plan was phenomenal. It covered all my medication. I've got asthma and allergies. I'm on 4 different medications. And I had to pay a normal, appropriate amount for all of my medications. With my new ACA plan, they didn't cover one of my 4 medications. That was going to be $900 for an 8th month of supply of Nasonex. I'm blessed enough that I can afford my premiums, but I can't afford $900 for Nasonex. Thankfully, I can go and get Flonase at Walmart and survive off of that just fine and keep everything in check. But what scares me is the people who have real serious mental or physical ailments, and they get on the ACA and they can't afford it when it bumps from 100 to 900 and possibly even a whole lot more. They've got to put together a plan if they want to stick with this America Healthcare Act that helps all the people who have the young people who are going to turn 26 and make sure that those prescriptions are covered no matter what, to keep everybody healthy.
Chris?
I think you highlighted a really important point right there with what you just said about the cost of healthcare and especially the cost of prescription medicine, because one of the things that's been argued before, that I've heard argued before, is for private practice and certain companies and big pharma and how far the government should be involved with that. I think one of the easiest cases to point out of what's so terribly, horribly wrong with the healthcare system and why the government should intervene was the case that happened just last year with Martin Shkreli going and buying out Daraprim, which is a life-saving, high anti-inflammatory bacterial sort of medicine that helps people who are not only just nursing mothers but prone to infection, but also those that are suffering from HIV. And it's a life-saving medication for those who are on it. Mind you, it's only a small fraction of the population that are on it, but he took the pill, and with his rights to it, he charged just up the price of the pill, which is one per day, from $13.50 a pill to $750 a pill, which is absolutely ludicrous. I don't see how that would not be counted as like an act of terrorism against so many people. But I think that highlights one of the points where government needs to step in and say, you can't just go ahead and just do this without intervening in anyone else's lives, because what he just did essentially just went and interfered with so many people's lives and possibly put so many people at risk because of it.
Chastity?
I think that's the part that's not being considered between the Democrats or the Republicans as well in the House. There are a lot of people at risk here. There are a lot of things at stake here. And if you're going to overhaul anything, if you're going to change anything, and you're going to say that and you're going to make that your point in what you're doing, you actually have to have a plan in place for that. You have to have something that you can touch, something tangible that makes sense to the people you're presenting it to. And with this being the honeymoon phase with Trump's first 100 days, I don't want to be on my honeymoon unsure what we're going to eat or where we're going to go, or if we have a lodging for the night. So it's the same case with my president in this country. I don't want to back a guy who cannot tell me physically and show me what he's going to do. You said you're going to do it. You keep telling us you're going to do it. How are you going to do it? What is going to make it better? How do you plan to make it affordable? What makes it affordable? What makes it for America? And that's the part that concerns me, because we're all sitting here, but how often do you use the health care that you're being penalized for? How often can you afford a $700 pill when you need one every day? That's not affordable care.
The issue with that is that Trump has no idea what health insurance is. It was very difficult for him to understand it.
A lot of these Congress members too, they got good quality care, trust me, for the rest of their life. They're gonna be just fine.
They should be held they should set themselves at the same standard they try to set us at and see if they can survive from it, so that it's not relatable. They can't relate. So I feel like that's a big part of it too. They can't relate because they're taken care of.
Well, and I think across party lines, those sorts of sentiments, let's have, I don't know how many people that I've heard that kind of comment from. Let's have Congress, let's have the president, let's have the folks making the decisions forced to deal with the same situation that John and Jane Public. Gloria, did you have a question?
Well, I was just thinking about this whole situation, the honeymoon phase, and the way that he's gone about everything. I think that it's encouraging to see that he is making an effort, but at the same time, I'd really like to see him work more with Congress and really. I mean, it seems like it took him by surprise that this bill wouldn't pass. But if he would have talked to them more and made maybe more compromises. I mean, I know he made a compromise towards the end, but he clearly wasn't prepared for that. And I mean, I saw a lot of concerns on both sides. I mean, about the people over 50 paying more, about the people who may not be covered. I just think that ultimately everybody wants those vulnerable in our society to be covered, but our nation is also based on freedoms, and people also need the freedom to make that decision for themselves.
Freedom as far as to buy or not to purchase?
Yes.
We have just a minute or so to go. Any final comments? Yes, Chris.
I think one of the key sort of like struggles Trump is facing is that he assumed just because he has a Republican majority across all federal branches in government right now, he thought that it would be easy to just go in and get the support he needs and just go and bulldoze in whatever he wanted and get his way. However, that's clearly not the case. There's still a large base of the GOP that does not support him, not even going into the popular vote or the majority of the Americans that support him. But it is still it's almost kind of like humbling to go and see that him just going trying to humble himself now, that realizing that even though he has the technical majority for the people there, he still does not have the actual majority needed to go and like force through with what he needs to get done or what he wants to get done.
Immigration was the second issue of importance among students who took the polls. President Trump's first action as president was to sign an executive order banning permanent residents and visa holders from 7 Muslim-majority countries from entering the United States. That order was blocked by a federal judge who issued a temporary restraining order. The president issued a second executive order targeting refugees, and the earlier restraining order was unanimously upheld by a 3-judge panel. This week, as national attention turns to the budget, Republicans agreed to drop a $1 billion down payment to begin construction on the border wall. That after Democrats vowed to shut the government down if money for a wall was included. We open the floor now to the topic of immigration. Who'd like to start? Chastity?
Okay.
Well, you had your
The
hand
wall.
up.
Yeah, I know. I was still collecting. The wall. I was listening to NPR this morning, I'm pretty sure, and they were talking about a treaty that was about maybe 54 years old or 74 years old. Don't quote me on that part. But the treaty was about the Rio Grande, and they can't build any. Supposedly, there are no structures supposed to be able to be built if they are going to change the flow of that river, and it's a flood risk to the other side. Also, they've been complaining about the gates that are up at the border right now since '92. They're also saying that there's no building of a wall that can happen if both sides don't agree to it. How are you going to do that? Are we going to throw those treaties out of the window? I am very proud that, like someone said, no, a federal judge said, no, we're going to block this. Because, for one, I think blocking people from coming here is wrong in general. You brought a whole faction of people who didn't want to be here. So let the people who want to come. Yes, within reason, everything in moderation. But how? Does that mean that we're going to throw out those treaties? Are we going to throw out every treaty because we need our way? Do we disregard them? They've stood here. They've kept things in order all the time. Relationships with Canada, Mexico, China are in jeopardy right now because of his rhetoric and his tactics and the way he goes about running the presidency, like if it's his hotel chain or his businesses. And that's becoming a problem because you can't, contracts. You can't just break them like that. So I'm wondering what is the plan on that. I don't think that's okay. That's wrong. It's unfair. And are they gonna break those treaties? Do they just go against those laws and say forget about it? We're still gonna build the wall. And then we have a budget crisis coming up. Where's the money gonna come from?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, just yesterday, I speak on the refugee and border wall standpoint, but just yesterday, Senator Ted Cruz proposed a bill called the El Chapo bill, and what that is that El Chapo is essentially a billionaire. The bill was introducing to tax El Chapo from his billionaire investments and his drug lords, and it's $1 billion investment, and what it is that Ted Cruz proposed to use the money from his investments to fund the wall. From the refugee standpoint, I just see it as if I'm in my own house, if I don't know who that person is or where they're coming from, I'm not going to let them come in my house. Just like personally, I have a no soliciting sign. See, I got some people behind me that, what am I talking about? I have a no soliciting sticker. I used to live in a house. I don't know that person. I don't know where they're coming from. They're pretty nice, don't get me wrong, but we had just met, and that should apply to the refugee standpoint. You don't know where they're coming from, who they stand for. Don't get me wrong, that's just a small percentage. Speaking on that standpoint, but regardless of that, the left and the right are gonna have to get together and they're gonna have to mesh together if they want to get things done. One statistic I remember back in 2006, it was then Senator Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden, and Senator at that time Chuck Schumer. At that time, they all voted for a border fence. Has it worked? Was it effective? It worked, but it wasn't effective as enough. Now, some of their policies, it just hasn't effectively worked. It's worked, but not effectively. The border crisis at the border crossings at that time was staggering, increasingly up. Now, it's going down, but progressively, not a whole lot. But as far as that bill has the potential to go far in the Senate, but it's all up to the congressmen in D.C. It's all up what they want to do, because in the end, who is it going to affect? The American people.
Andrew?
I'll start.
Austin,
It's no
I was
problem,
thinking
sir.
Andrew.
It's quite all right.
He's Andrew. You're Austin.
I
know
would
who
s-
you are.
I would say I'm very much against the building of the wall at the border. Much of the economy, much of our economy, is based on agriculture. By further trying to, I would say, turn away relations from Mexico, you would be potentially getting rid of most of our agricultural workers that work in states such as Texas, California, New Mexico, and Arizona. So that's going to be taking away a lot. That's going to be increasing food prices, taking away further taxes from the government, which is already in a high deficit. And it's only going to make the situation that we have much worse in the big picture.
That is, I'm sorry, I didn't want to cut everybody off. That is actually true. Matter of fact, the state of Texas is, and like I said in the last town hall, is the 14th largest economy in Texas. Matter of fact, I just read an article a couple weeks ago that the agriculture.
Excuse me, I didn't. What was that statistic?
The statistic is, and don't call me where I got it from, because
You gotta tell us where you got it from.
But-
I need to know.
it's the 14th largest
What
economy in
is
the
the
world.
14th largest?
Oh, Texas? Yeah, it's somewhere up there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Texas
14th
is
lar-
in the
nation?
In the
Oh,
nation.
oh, so
You're saying the
your
world,
statistic is
world or the nation?
Texas is the
itself.
globally. If you look at all economies, if Texas were a standalone, a sovereign nation, it would be
Right.
the 14th largest.
Sure.
Correct.
Okay,
Sure.
I understand.
And what Austin pointed out is actually pretty true. You have goods and services that come through Texas like nothing. I mean, you have, and also it's a manufacturing and an agricultural, I don't want to say monopoly, but I mean it's in a way, one of the best globally. Okay, those goods and services are passing by through the state in Mexico day by day. So it's up to President Trump if he actually wants to work with President Peña Nieto of Mexico and how they want to work. You know, believe it or not, both candidates, Peña Nieto and Trump, are actually very unfavorable in the world. Peña Nieto is very unfavorable in the country of Mexico. So is Trump, and Trump here in the U.S. But both candidates are very unfavorable. So it's up to them if they want to get together and agree on what they want to do about this wall. But legislation just was introduced yesterday about El Chapo's billion-dollar assets.
Okay.
So
It's going to cost a lot more than $1 billion to build the wall.
Right.
Okay, Gloria, go
And
ahead.
then what makes you think that El Chapo? I'm
hold
sorry.
on, hold on. Go ahead.
So, while we're on the topic of the wall, I think that one thing it's important to recognize is you can't be a country without borders. And it's very important to understand who is coming in and, what they're doing in your country, because if you don't regulate that, you'll have no idea about mass immigration, about what kind of, economy, how it's going to affect the economy. And so I think that perhaps to some extent, we may need to make it easier for some of these people who are good, hardworking people in our country to be able to come in legally. But on the same note, we have to protect our borders and understand who's coming through. And at the moment, we're having trouble with that. When it comes to Syria, I think that what happened with the ban, I'm glad that they decided to not restrict visa holders after all. I think that it is a temporary ban, and so, that's what its purpose was meant to be a placeholder for a system that's going to be put in place so that we can really understand who is going to be coming to our country. And I think that's important. I think that we need to know that. And there's a lot of layers to that, when it comes to mass immigration for countries like in Europe, that, it's not about a plane ride, they walk over there. You have to consider more than just the effect on their country, but the effect on the country they're coming from ultimately. that country is going to be left without workers. How are we going to rebuild that? Because to some extent, we did create that power vacuum that left the country the way it is. And without workers, how are they going to rebuild that? How are we going to help them rebuild that, if possible, so that they can stand alone?
Just to sort of go off what Gloria was talking about with the wall, I think, everybody agrees. We don't want any gun smugglers, any drug dealers coming on here to our country doing all sorts of harm. And these sanctuary cities got to figure themselves out, because they're not going to be able to hold on to those immigrants in the shadows who aren't criminals. Because when somebody gets deported 5 times, comes back into San Francisco and commits murder, you're going to have people forever be pissed off at that. And that's an issue that none of us want to go through. And so I think when Trump displays it as sort of like this huge Berlin Wall, it scares people. But, I do agree we have to have strong borders, and we want a good relationship with Mexico in the process. We need a good neighbor policy. We don't need to be insulting or denigrating them. I do think it's a problem since the president promised they would pay for it, and now we have to pay for it. But the real solution to all of this, I think, would really have to be immigration reform, which has become a partisan issue. I mean, it was Reagan who passed it last time. I don't understand why it is one now. We got to get these 11 million people. You can't just rip apart these families, many of whom have kids who are U.S. citizens. Like, that's a recipe for disaster. Like, we need to get them a path towards citizenship, get them out of the shadows, get them paying their taxes. Let's not have them be exploited for $3-4 an hour. Let's have them at least get minimum wage. I don't think that's too much to ask for. And I think both parties would agree with that. And now, as far as the refugee ban goes, I thought that was pretty shameful. We did the same thing during the Holocaust, and I think that was a bad mistake. During the Vietnam War, we took in a lot of refugees because when Gerald Ford was president, he said, it's one thing to go in there, destroy the country, and lose the war. It's another thing to just close our doors when we went in there to provide freedom for them. So to an unpopular Congress, he went ahead and allowed in thousands of refugees. People don't really pay attention to that, but I think that was something very noble to do. And personally, just being the son of Muslim immigrants, it just so happens that Pakistan, where my parents are from, is an ally, which is why I wasn't on that list. But people in that country have to deal with ISIS and Al-Qaeda on a daily basis, and a lot of them want to come to a civilized country for a better life. Would that country be next if for some reason the president decided that? It's not who we are. It's not what the Statue of Liberty was put up there for. We're that beacon of hope.
As Harris said, we're supposed to be the beacon of hope. And as far as Vietnam, Gulf of Tonkin never happened, so it's only right to open your borders for a war you started. Then on top of that, yes, there needs to be a more direct path to citizenship. It's one thing for you to say that we want to, reform immigration, and this is how we're going to reform immigration. They get a direct path, they get wages. We don't consider the fact that they get here, they work, they live here. Someone's hiring them. Those businesses aren't being punished. They're American businesses. They aren't being punished. They aren't being held responsible. Someone houses them. They're not being held responsible. And most of these things require legitimate ID, birth certificates, identification. And that's not being addressed. The citizenship path is long and strenuous. Apparently, it takes years and years on end to get there. And then you say, oh, well, these people shouldn't be here. Well, on a larger scale, we should worry about inside our door, too, because inside our door, we also, on the same breath that we need to know who's coming in, we need to monitor who's coming in. We already can monitor who's here and what they do and what their intentions are. So yes, there does need to be reform, but I don't feel like it should isolate and knock out any particular group of people, especially since we were the place that was the melting pot. This is supposed to be the land of opportunity and the land of freedom and the land of coming together and the land of people, and it's not that anymore. It's more exclusive than inclusive.
Kevin, we'll let you have the last word.
I'll make it fast. The wall is a pipe dream. Anybody thinks they're going to keep drug smugglers, gun smugglers, human traffickers out of this country, they'll dig holes. They've dug holes, and they will continue to dig holes. And they'll get right in, not a problem. It'll go unnoticed, and it'll happen. It's been happening for a long time. Did your parents come through here through legal ramifications?
Yeah, that's right.
Same here. My mother came from Mexico when she was 14 with her 2 younger sisters. Did everything, taught herself the English language, and I get upset when I see people taking advantage of this country, not paying their taxes. And just sometimes there are bad hombres. You've got to take the good with the bad. If they came in here illegally, I don't care if you're a good hombre or a bad hombre. We're going to get you out of here, and then you're going to be given the chance. I don't care how long it takes, 2 years, a year, and then come back in the legal way. Just do it. It's simple.
Thank you very much, all of you, for your thoughtful comments. We'll turn our attention now to the bombing of Syrian airfields in a pre-dawn raid on April 7th. That ranked third in our polling of Richland College students. 59 Tomahawk missiles were fired from U.S. warships in the eastern Mediterranean in an action against the Russian-backed Syrian army that used poison gas against its own citizens. The action was praised by many Americans, but caused a significant blow to American-Russian relations. One bomb reportedly hit U.S. allies, killing 18, while another reportedly hit a mosque, killing 75 civilians. So students, what are your thoughts on that bombing and where we go from here? Yes, please, Austin.
Oh yeah, no
all yours.
problem. I would like to say that I'm not a big fan of the bombing. America itself is the global police force of the world itself, and we're basically stationed in almost every country of every continent. So it shouldn't necessarily be too hard to send, I wouldn't say foot soldiers, but the soldiers that are already stationed there to, if it takes a year or like 2 years to resolve a problem that can just be resolved in a day with a bomb, but it'll have much more repercussions because it'll be killing so many more just people that are in the way. Well, I wouldn't say in the way, but just caught in the crossfire. Because there's already a story that was released today saying that there was a number of buses that were carrying evacuees, and it's estimated to be about 120 that was killed because of the Tomahawk missiles.
And what we were aiming at what were we aiming at?
Syria Air Base.
I think that was an ISIS bombing of the evacuee buses, not the Tomahawks.
Oh,
But I take your larger point, though.
I mean, listen. Syria, listen, the government is corrupt. It's absolute a disaster. For them to put chemical attacks against humanity is terrible. So that's why the bomb was necessary. See, this is how I look at it. Had Donald Trump had asked Congress, it took too much time. That's why I'm ready to get in state legislature already, because I'm just going to already say it. When I get in state legislature, I'm going to already propose a bill to already fund I-35 to just rapidly speed it, because I-35 has been going on forever, for 30 years. That's how I'm quick to get in state legislature. Now, had we asked Congress, I bet you something would have happened where they're going to back and forth. That's what I'm saying. These parties do not agree with each other, and that's what's killing America. They never want to agree on anything. That's why I should say we should abolish political parties, because I call them this. I call the Democrats the Democrips, and I call the Republicans the Rebloodicans, Crips and Bloods, because they never can agree on each other. They never can agree on anything. And that's why I understand. Well, the red on the American flag, blue on red and blue, it's on the American flag. It's both on the same flag. They don't get any, in close contact. So that's what I'm saying. That bomb, it was the best thing, because honestly, Syria, we just look about the kids, the standpoint. Hundreds and hundreds of kids, women, and children they died because of the chemical, what the Syrians did on the chemical population, or the chemical warfare, I guess.
Okay, Chris?
I don't know about all that. There's one particular point I've always wanted to go and address that I find has not been addressed in this whole conversation is, why would the Syrian government go and gas their own citizens? Why would they start an attack on people that are already being either subservient or supportive of their government? It doesn't really make any sense unless, of course, you are trying to go and ignite some sort of relations with, like, Russia and Syria and you're trying to go and get something agitated. It seems more like it could have been a terrorist subplot within the country for that. I also want to point out that it's just so almost hypocritical of the U.S. to sort of take this standpoint against some kind of government making these sort of attacks against our own citizens after sort of Vietnam vowing that we'd never go and get that heavily involved with other affairs of heads of state, or vowing that, oh, we're going to go and oust Assad, we're going to go and free the Syrian people. And they want to make this big point about this one bomb in Syria, but they don't take any sort of like stance on these other countries that are either having children died to humanitarian crises, or whether it be Israel versus Gaza and the strips there being completely blown apart by each other, and the tens of thousands of hundreds of thousands of people that have died there over the past course of like the last decade under either the Obama administration or the Bush administration, and the war that has gone on there for, God, it almost seems my entire life now. And at 27, I remember the Twin Trade Centers going down when I was just 11 years old, and now this fighting just has not stopped, and it's just been ongoing and ongoing, and I'm nearly 30 now, and I'm just like, eventually someone's going to have to go and just try and step their foot down and just say enough's enough, but not to the point of going and interfering in every single government around town.
Gloria?
I understand why he chose to do that kind of tactical bombing on the airfield. I understand the reasoning. I think to some extent there are some positive things to that particular airfield bombing, in that we are trying to send a clear message that chemical attacks we won't tolerate them. And I think that I would have liked to see more evidence that it truly was Assad. I really would have liked to see that. I hope that perhaps there's just something we don't know, about what's going on that perhaps the government knows. I would hope so. But I understand, and I think that to some degree, unfortunately, Assad is basically the best thing we've got over there right now. As far as not leaving them in a vacuum, not leaving them to the terrorists. He's the only one who's really stepped up so far. And so I think that what we're doing here is we're saying, hey, if this was you, we're not tolerating this. We're taking a strong position against it, and hoping for the best in the future. But if something like this were to happen again, it's a very strong warning against that. And I think that in that regard, that is good. But I would have liked to see more evidence.
Chastity has been so patient. Thank you.
She has. Thank you.
What Gloria just said, she would like to see more evidence. I agree with that. I was watching an interview where Assad first spoke on it, and he seemed very adamant about not having the U.S. or Syria investigate the chemical attack and to put it not in his exact words, but from where I've heard it before in a class that I've had, that I took last week, and it was more of, I want someone from the outside to investigate it, because this is a ritual for the U.S. They come into a country where they're already stationed, they attack within, and then say that they were attacked, or feel that they have to come in and make a stand for the people in that country. I'm curious, like I asked at the beginning, I'm curious to know what is the resource, if any, that they have there that we could possibly want. What makes them so sure that Assad bombed his own people? And why are you so worried about a chemical attack all the way in Syria when Flint, Michigan still can't drink their water? That bothers me. And that's the thing about America. I do understand how we became to be the world power we are. We go in, we take the things that we want. We've always been that way. That's not going to stop. I understand our need for borders and control and reform at our borders, because I probably, after so many years of going in and taking what I wanted from every other country, I would probably be nervous about them coming in and doing the same things. But also, you have to realize that there are things going on inside your home, and you do have to address those things, because those people who you're trying to influence are watching you. they're looking at you, and since you're supposed to be the example and you're supposed to be setting the example, you're not setting a very good one for your citizens. You're not very much trying to protect your people. You're not very much trying to be sure that their health and their lives and their livelihoods are protected. So why are you so invested in another country? Those missiles cost money, but there are people here who can't eat food and don't have a place to live and who cannot get adequate health care or child care or just for themselves in general. Housing keeps going up and jobs keep opening up, but people still can't afford it. But we have money for war and we can't feed poor people, hungry people, sick people. That to me says a lot about our government and what our focuses are. We care way more about our military and way more about protecting this idea of an attack that may or may not happen than we do about the things that are currently in front of us. The healthcare issue can be reformed. It can be fixed. The borders can be reformed. They can be fixed. Immigration can be fixed. All of these things are resolvable, but the focus is not in the proper place to resolve those things. And until it comes back home, like the message he's been preaching in those 100 days and all through the election, America first, America first, America first. Start worrying about America and not those other places. And maybe, just maybe, those other places will follow suit and everything will come together.
Andrew?
Oh, I mean, just to add on with Chastity, so I mean, I do have to agree. I mean, listen, the people of Flint, Michigan, they didn't deserve that. I mean, I wish, the city council in that city, Flint.
It's not just that city. I just said that one. It's more than that one.
More than Flint, of course, and America first, right. But you're right. We can't worry about the world more than our own country. We have a lot of homeless veterans in the street. We have not just veterans, homeless people in the street. And we have to worry about us first before we can't be the world's policeman in a way. We have to worry about United States of America first. And that's what we are, because as a patriot myself, we have to worry about this country and its needs before anybody else. And I mean, and that goes to, every state, everywhere in this country. You have a lot of people that, they need our help and they're relying on somebody. I'll also add on Chastity's point that we're not doing enough. A couple months ago, President Donald Trump signed an executive order on making a priority for HBCU colleges, historically black colleges, making that a priority.
Priority to what? Go ahead.
To HBCU colleges.
Making them a priority to what?
Just priority.
How?
Focusing on the funding to them, giving them the access, the benefits that they need. All HBCU colleges in the Southeast SWEC, given that priority.
I think what's really scary is that we've got a guy who cares more about golfing and spending his money and elevating his name, deciding whether or not we're going to bomb Assad, who is a bad guy. There's plenty of evidence to prove that he's a bad guy. He's the one making the decisions while traveling to Mar-a-Lago and costing so much of our tax dollars just to live in his tower and eat his rare steaks.
No. Well done steaks.
Can't
Yes,
remember
well
which
done steaks.
Alright,
Very
well,
sorry.
Harris,
With
something-
ketchup.
Yeah,
Harris had something you wanted to add.
just going back to Syria, I think that was the best thing he's done. That's the moment he became president of the United States. The top reasons I did not want him to be president was because he was soft on Russia, trashing NATO. I thought he was going to make us isolationists. And that's not an America I know, an America I live in. I will do everything in my guts to make sure that we're engaged in the world's arena at all times, because it's a dangerous world out there and we got to be on point. And when you have the strongest military of the world and you're the leader of the free world, you have a moral obligation to step in when war crimes are being committed. That was genocide. And to Trump's credit, all that TV that he watches, he saw the footage of those Syrians being in misery by their own government, and it hurt his heart. He has a heart.
But it doesn't apply to his own country and the people in it.
And that's why he stepped in. And I think that was the right thing to do. I don't want to see another Iraq. We've all talked to our veterans and we know what that's like. Let's not have another blunder. Let's have the Turks and the Arabs fight their own battles. Let's train them. Let's have special forces. But we got to defeat ISIS and we have to get rid of Assad.
Right, but
that
Jesse,
guy has to go.
You have to look at about the children in Syria, children and women, because of that genocide. That's why that triggered that.
And it's not the first time he's done that, Assad. Those kind of genocides happen consistently.
You can't defeat an ideology like ISIS, like Islamic terrorism, as long as there are going to be radical fringe sects of religion in the world. You're not going to go
You
and get
can't
rid of
defeat
them.
an idea.
But American foreign aid makes such a big difference too. Let's not forget that.
It's not that it
comes
doesn't
from
make a
military
difference.
funding as well.
It's not that it doesn't make a difference, and I agree with it in the aid, but I don't feel like you should teach Syria not to bomb their own people by not caring about yours and bombing theirs.
Okay, last word.
Just this hasn't always been the case. It's not that it's just, the ideology. This is a result of the power vacuum we left. They had this under control. And so I think that we can contribute to getting it back to, a stable region.
Okay, thank you very much. Our final point of conversation today turns to the environment. Pardon me. On the day President Trump took office, a page devoted to climate change disappeared from the White House website. 4 days later, he signed executive orders resurrecting the controversial Keystone XL and Dakota Access pipelines. Executive orders in February removed protections to streams and threatened the Clean Water Act. In March, regulations on methane, a potent greenhouse gas, were lifted. Car pollution standards were rolled back and funding for the Clean Air Act was cut in half. At the end of March, he signed another executive order that targeted former President Obama's signature plan to fight global warming. Trump says he's putting jobs ahead of the environment. On Earth Day, he stated that his administration was committed to advancing scientific research. He said economic growth enhances environmental protection. What are your thoughts on President Trump's environmental policies?
Oh,
Chris.
I am all over this. Not just because I'm a student going towards a bachelor's in environmental and conservation sciences, but also because I've been closely following the environmental issues. I haven't really been on board with much of whatever the other candidates were on when the race for presidency started, but I was always following on the environment and what was going to happen with the pipelines and the clean air and the clean water and everything like that. And to see what Trump is doing in trying to dismantle this sort of like natural heritage of the United States is absolutely deplorable. One of the first acts he did was to try and cut off pieces of the national park and sell it as private land, and he doesn't have any right to do that. That's not just his land or the government's land, that's our land. That's a part of our natural heritage there. And not only that, but I brought this up once in Professor Moore's government class, that the Alaskans in Congress, their Senate, their congressmen were able to repeal a ban that prevented hunters from going in and shooting wolf cubs and bear cubs and these creatures as they hibernate in their dens in Alaska, and essentially just allowing hunters to go and essentially just blow them out of their holes in the middle of winter when they're hibernating. And no one believes that was a big industry, but you have no idea how much of an industry that was. And I just consistently see more and more of this sort of cruelty to animals and the environment, just cutting off and going after these issues. And it's particularly egregious to me, especially with the pipelines, as someone who is Native American. This isn't just land that you can just go and cut up and divide and sell and tear up and bulldoze and destroy. This is sacred land. This is land where we believe the spirits of our ancestors have resided, where the spirits of nature, where our friends and family in the spirit world live and reside. And to have someone just want to go in and completely disrespect and destroy that is absolutely abominable, especially since I was reading online today that President Trump is working on getting rid of one of the most recent, the last national monument that President Obama signed into effect before he left office was on Bear Ear National Monument Park, which was going to be just a little ways away from the Grand Canyon. That's the first thing he's going after, and that is it was very sacred to 5 native tribes in the United States, and to just have someone go off against it was just. I better stop myself there before I go off on a tangent on it, but it's just very important. It's very crucial. It's not just, it's going to go and be bad business for the government. It's going to be bad business for the environment. It's going to destroy and pollute, and it's going to do so much more damage than any sort of like bettering the sort of like jobs that Trump thinks he can do with it.
Chastity.
My only thought and comment on the Keystone Pipeline is that wherever they were trying to build it at first was in the wrong set of people's backyards, and those people said no, and you moved it. What's so different about these people who respect this land, who live off this land? Why can't you build the dang on pipeline above ground? Like, you can do everything above ground if you try to. Run a line, build it above ground, get out of the way, take it somewhere else. There's other options. Why are you not exploring them? Why do you want to just do a pissing contest to see who's going to win at the end of the day? Not only that, you have the media there and these people here on their land, and you have them attacking them for standing and saying, no, I just want clean water. And then y'all talk about, oh, going to Syria and bomb them because of chemicals. They don't seem to care about it when it's happening here. They don't seem to care about it when it is directly related to everyone's relations in their country. Why is it not a legal right to have clean water and you not to dig your pipeline in my backyard? It's not your right. That's not okay. Why isn't anything sacred here in this country when it runs through the government?
Yeah, I just feel, I'm not Native American or anything, but like, haven't we done enough? Like, let's just let them be. Like, they have huge problems, and I don't know, I just feel like we've made our mistakes there, clearly. So let's do our best to try to be respectful. And this notion that you gotta choose between jobs or the economy is just bullcrap to me. Like solar, wind, all this hydroelectricity, like this is the future right here. Like, why are we still focused on the past? Let's take these good, hardworking coal miners in West Virginia and these steel workers and factory workers in Pennsylvania, and let's teach them how to build solar panels. Like, let's get the new green economy. That's going to bring us a whole lot of money. Like, if Trump does not want to believe in climate change, look, that's his burden to bear. But he loves jobs. He loves talking about putting people back to work. And I'm all for that. There's so many jobs in clean energy. It's better for the environment, and it's good for business.
With the pages that he's taken down and the parts of government that he said that are not necessary, he's taken away more jobs than he created in the first 100 days. And it's like you said, we made enough mistakes. Y'all, I'm going to say y'all because I'm part of the mistake y'all made. Y'all made enough mistakes. It's like, why are we still even being charged for things that are free anyway? This whole world will run if the sun comes out every day, which it normally does. The wind blows every day. The water energy, the solar energy, everything is there. And we still, our economy suffers because we have to pay for things that are free.
The big problem is the head of the
rainwater.
EPA. He's this governor from Oklahoma who, it's this big, huge scandal. He's in the pocket of big oil. He's gonna set us back. But don't worry, you were worried, and don't worry. There's plenty of smart people working in California who are gonna just forget all this. We're gonna move forward. There's gonna be plenty of resources diverted to enhance the technology that'll refine and allow our society to go on, because you can read reports from the whoever does all the reports of global warming, and they're terrifying. They're terrifying, and people are coming around. We had this March on Science, March for Science, and there are plenty of people who recognize that we've got to keep moving forward. Trump's not going to stop this. No matter what he says or does, he's not going to stop the advancement of technology and renewable energies.
Chris, did I see your hand?
Yes. So sort of building on what everyone has been saying about clean air, clean energy, clean jobs, that's probably one of the biggest ways you could make America great again is to make it self-sufficient on energy. We're only right now taking advantage of I just saw a video on it the other day, 13% of the energy for the United States is coming from natural renewable resources that we are using right now. And how much more powerful would it be if we just said, like, to the Middle East, to Canada, to Mexico, like, hey, we don't need oil from anywhere. We're just going to go and have our own clean oil. We're going to take everyone that's already here. We're going to employ them in jobs in the environment. We're going to create green jobs, green gas, green energy. And that would be, like, the biggest way to just go and make America great would be to go and make it self-sufficient on energy. And it would take time and it would take effort to go and get that done. But it would be beneficial in the long run, because by 2050 we could have an entirely clean, sustainable government that would be reliant on only itself for its energy. And everyone keeps talking. He keeps talking about how he wants to create jobs, President Trump, but he wants to completely gut and get rid of and dismantle the Environmental Protection Agency by 2018, and that's going to cost and get rid of more than $900 billion in income that the national parks and wildlife and recreation centers go and bring in, and it's also going to go and put another 54,000 Americans out of work. So I don't see how you want to try and do that to go and make any sense.
The factory jobs. I'm sorry.
See, Gloria?
Well, starting back up on the Keystone Pipeline and the other mentioned Native American grounds, I mean, to some extent, I want to say I understand, but honestly, I think that these places, I mean, these national parks are a very beautiful part of our heritage, of our country, and I do think that we should make a strong effort to, build around them. I think that they are worth building around, and it is worth respecting. Some of these places that have a lot of meaning to people in our country. And I agree with some of the stuff Harris said earlier. Yeah, haven't we done enough? I mean, I know that this is our ancestors, but some of these things we should respect the heritage of the people and these grounds. I understand. What I understand is the Keystone Pipeline. I understand that we're trying to get off of the reliance of oil from the Middle East, from other places. We want to be self-sufficient, and we're going at it a different way. And from what I understand, I don't really know if it's possible to be entirely reliant on solar or wind. I've heard that nuclear is a viable option, but I do believe that most of us can agree we want to be self-reliant as far as energy. And I think that it's really a shame that so many of us can't agree about what's going on in our environment. And I think that I'd really like to see more understanding conversations between both sides, because I think that sometimes when we talk to people who disagree about climate change, people tend to be a bit, they tend to just look at them like they're crazy, You don't believe in climate change, but all these scientists believe in it. And I think that we need to approach this in a more educational way, because I think that minds can be changed, and the evidence and the truth will come through.
Eventually.
Andrew.
Oh, well, yes. I'm all for the environment, but as long as it's good for the state, Texas, me, I'm pro Texas and everything with it,
Hook 'em horns.
Hook 'em, gig 'em, whatever. So, sick 'em. But listen, I like to speak about the state in general. That's why I mentioned to you, Professor Moore, that we are the 14th largest in the world as far as an economy. And also in the environment, we are also, if you actually look at it, we are, in a way, top dog, not as far as in the country. We have a lot of solar energy, wind energy. As a matter of fact, correct me if I'm wrong, but in West Texas they have a lot of wind power.
I've seen those. Yeah.
Wind power, and just going down Highway 183, going to Grapevine, I'm looking. I'm in the car, and I'm looking towards the right, and I see a whole bunch of houses, and I'm looking at the roof, and the roof looked a little funny. I'm thinking, what is that? And I look, and it's solar energy on top of the roof. The roof, you don't see in old-fashioned roof, roofers putting new roofing on. The whole house was full of solar energy. That's what the roof was. And I'm thinking, that's so innovative. That's something I've never seen before. It's amazing. Uber is going to have flying cars by 2019. 2019. Dallas is one of the few cities, one of the two cities, Dallas and Dubai, are one of the cities that are going to have Uber cars. As far as the environment, I just speak on the state perspective. We're doing great. We're creating jobs. We're being eco-friendly. We'll stay there. We'll keep it there.
Okay.
Chastity.
All right, Chastity.
Okay, creating jobs. I have to address that one time. Just creating jobs. Creating jobs is fine, but do any of you want to work in a factory?
Create jobs.
Do you want to work in a factory, Andrew?
If I have to, I will. If I have to, I will.
If you have to.
If I have to,
but
I
you
will.
don't have to. And those are the jobs that he keeps saying about bringing back. And that's the part that scares me. It's like you're saying you want to create jobs, but which jobs are you trying to create? And with the environment, like my end with that is what you said, as within, so without. If we start inside of the United States and worry about the people who are here, you can't exterminate everybody. You can't exile everybody that's not supposed to be here. Since they're here, train them to be here. Find out who is here before you start worrying about who's coming in here. If you get a hold on who is already here, you'll be able to keep a containment on what's coming in. If you teach what's already here, you'll be able to maintain what's already here. And our environment is a thing that we need to maintain. If you start inside, it'll go out and it'll transfer. And all the things that we're trying to force on other countries, when they see that they work here, they may not need us to come in and with our military enforce our ways on them. They may say, hey, that's working, we'll try that. Right now, nothing's working here.
What I like is that this president has brought back Carrier. Ford is still here, although if there's one Ford factory in Mexico. But what I like about this president as far as jobs is that he's brought back Carrier. That Carrier was going to go down to Mexico. Ford stayed here. They're actually going to create millions or thousands of jobs in Detroit, Michigan. So that's what I like about, because we're bringing American-made jobs, keeping them here instead of going to, while going back to Chastasy's point, while people are losing their jobs in Flint, Michigan is, in a way, not just Flint, but everywhere. We're keeping people back to work instead of going to other countries where, why send them to other countries? We have them here. Keep people going to work.
You're looking nervous.
Trump took responsibility for bringing Ford back here. Ford did it themselves.
Thank you.
Okay, what about Carrier, though? What was that all about? Carrier, that was all him.
Trump should bring some of his companies back before he tries to worry about everybody else's being back in here.
Say, how many of his products are still made in Mexico? How many of his products are still made in China?
We'll talk about that after the session.
Very nice. And with that, someone has to have the last word, and I think the group had it this week.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's good.
Very good. And with that, we conclude our second Richland Student Media Town Hall meeting. We certainly appreciate our panelists, crew members, our studio audience, and those online for joining us this afternoon.
You can view a podcast of this program in its entirety online at richlandstudentmedia.com. For Erica Edwards, I'm Patrick Moore. Thank you for joining us.